At 60, I began asking myself an uncomfortable question. Why had so many of my decisions revolved around sex? The places I visited, the men I noticed, the apps I opened, and even the way I measured a successful night. I assumed the answer was obvious. I wanted sex. But the older I became, the more I realized that sex was only the visible part of what I had been searching for. My name is Mike. I am 65 years old, divorced, the father of 2 grown children, and the grandfather of 4. I divorced when I was 60, which means I now have 5 years of experience living openly as a gay man. 5 years may sound like enough time to understand gay life. It is not. At 65, I am old enough to receive senior discounts, but in gay years, I am practically a kindergartner with lower back pain. Before my divorce, I lived what most people would recognize as a straight life. I married a woman, raised children, maintained a home, attended family gatherings, and performed the responsibilities associated with being a husband and father. My calendar, finances, friendships, holidays, and future were all organized around that structure. That life was not imaginary. My children are not evidence of a mistake. My grandchildren are not remnants of a false existence. I participated in that life, cared about the people in it, and accepted the responsibilities that came with it. But while I was married, I also had sexual encounters with men. For years, I treated those encounters as isolated events. I told myself they existed separately from my marriage and separately from my identity. I could have sex with a man, return home, and continue living as though nothing fundamental had happened. Sex with men was something I did. Living as a gay man was something I had never allowed myself to imagine. That distinction made secrecy possible. I could hide an encounter more easily than I could reconstruct an entire identity. An encounter had a beginning and an ending. A gay life would have affected everything. Inside those secret encounters, I did not need to deny my attraction to men. But once the encounter ended, I returned to the heterosexual structure that organized the rest of my existence. My gay sexuality had a room, but it did not have a home. When I divorced and came out at 60, I assumed the most significant change would be sexual freedom. I would no longer need excuses, secret messages, carefully timed absences, or the emergency reflexes of a man who could delete a conversation faster than most people can unlock their phones. I thought coming out meant I could finally have sex with men without hiding. And yes, that was part of it. I downloaded the apps. I visited places where gay men gathered. I became curious about gay beaches, campgrounds, bathhouses, cruises, parties, and destinations I had previously observed from a safe distance. For the first time, sexual possibility did not need to be smuggled into my life like prohibited merchandise. The freedom was exciting. After spending decades restricting my attraction to men, I wanted to experience the world I believed I had missed. I wanted to look at men openly, be noticed by them, and discover what it felt like to enter a space where being gay was not the exception. But I soon discovered that having sex with men was the easiest part of learning how to live as a gay man. Nobody had warned me about everything surrounding the sex. I had to learn how gay men communicated, socialized, dated, formed friendships, and negotiated boundaries. I had to decide how openly gay I wanted to be around my children, grandchildren, neighbors, and longtime friends. I had to determine which parts of gay culture felt natural to me and which parts did not. Coming out changed ordinary situations. Could I mention a date to my children? How would I introduce a man at a family gathering? Was I comfortable holding a man's hand in public? Should I correct someone who assumed I was straight, or simply let the moment pass? These questions had nothing to do with what happened in a bedroom. They concerned how much of myself I was willing to carry into daylight. The apps presented another education. They were profiles requesting honesty from men who refused to show their faces, men seeking commitment at midnight and forgetting about it by breakfast, and men whose definition of nearby apparently included 3 neighboring states. I learned that sexual access and social connection were not the same thing. Gay spaces could offer sex, but they also offered visibility. In those environments, I did not have to wonder whether another man was gay. I did not have to disguise where my eyes went or create an innocent explanation for my presence. I could simply exist as a gay man. But even that freedom required adjustment. Gay spaces had their own expectations, hierarchies, preferences, and forms of rejection. Coming out did not place me inside a permanent celebration where every man was waiting to welcome me personally. Apparently, the gay community had not spent 60 years preparing for my arrival. I also became deeply aware of the need to be chosen. When a man desired me, his attention seemed to confirm that I had not arrived too late. It reassured me that age had not made me invisible. But sexual attention was unreliable evidence. One man could make me feel desirable on Saturday, while an unanswered message on Sunday made me question everything again. I had to learn that being wanted did not automatically mean being understood. It certainly did not mean that 2 men wanted the same kind of life. Over those 5 years, I had a few relationships that lasted several months. They did not end because the men were bad people or because we lacked sexual attraction. They ended because we eventually discovered that we held different expectations about relationships. I wanted monogamy. Some of the men I dated were uncertain whether they wanted exclusivity. They valued connection, but did not necessarily want sexual freedom to end because a relationship had begun. At first, I interpreted that difference personally. I wondered whether I was not attractive enough, exciting enough, or experienced enough. Then I realized the disagreement was not necessarily about my value. We simply imagined gay life differently. I had spent most of my life following a heterosexual structure in which marriage and monogamy were presented as the standard destination. Some gay men wanted a similar structure. Others did not. Some had spent years escaping rules that I was now trying to rebuild in a new form. Being attracted to men did not mean we shared the same values, boundaries, or plans. That realization was difficult. I had assumed coming out would deliver me into a complete gay identity. Instead, it gave me the freedom and the responsibility to construct one for myself. After one of those short relationships ended, I found myself alone at home. I opened an app and looked at all the men available around me. If sex had been the real problem, the solution was right there in my hand. That was when the answer finally became clear. I had already experienced sex in every version of my adult life. I had sex with my wife while living as a straight man. I had secret sex with men while married. I had sex with men after my divorce. I had sex within the short relationships I attempted after coming out. Sex had been present before, during, and after the transformation. Therefore, sex could not be the transformation itself. What changed was the life surrounding it. At 60, I did not simply exchange women for men. I lost the structure that had organized most of my adult life and began constructing another one without instructions. I had to reconsider family, friendship, community, privacy, aging, commitment, and the future. I had to decide what kind of gay man I wanted to be when nobody else was writing the role for me. That was the part I had underestimated. I learned how to have sex with men long before I learned how to live openly as a gay man. Sex required desire and opportunity. An openly gay life required honesty, adjustment, boundaries, self-knowledge, and the courage to be visible outside sexual situations. I also had to accept that there is no single gay lifestyle. Some gay men are monogamous, some are not. Some organize vacations around gay destinations and sexual freedom. Others prefer quiet domestic lives. Some enjoy bathhouses, campgrounds, cruises, and parties. Others would rather stay home, watch television, and fall asleep before discovering who committed the murder.
None of those choices makes one man more authentically gay than another. My task was not to copy someone else's version of gay life. It was to decide which version allowed me to live honestly. At 65, sex remains important to me. I still notice men. I still have desires and fantasies. Age did not remove my libido. It merely gave it reading glasses. But sex now occupies a more honest place in my life. It is an expression of my sexuality, not the entire definition of my existence. Coming out was not simply permission to have sex with men. It was permission to stop dividing myself into separate people, the respectable man the world recognized and the gay man who appeared only in private. That is what I finally understood. At 60, I realized it was never just about sex. It was about rebuilding my life around a truth I had previously permitted to exist only during sex. It was about learning how to speak openly, participate honestly, establish boundaries, choose compatible relationships, and imagine a future as a gay man. Sex with men was part of that new life, but it was only a small fraction of it. If you came out later in life, what surprised you most about learning to live openly? Was sex the greatest adjustment, or did the ordinary parts of life prove more complicated? Share only what you feel comfortable sharing. Your experience may help another man understand that coming out is not a single announcement. It is the gradual process of bringing an entire life into alignment with the truth. This is The Inner Closet, a safe place for the stories we carried in silence and the truths we are finally ready to understand. I love you all.